Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irene. I'm the host here, and my guest today is Drew Hill. Hi, Drew.
Hello.
So you self-described yourself as a knitter, crocheter, and bunch of other things, and starting dabbling in quilting as well. What came
Yep,
first?
I
What craft did you learn first?
it's been a pretty interesting journey in the fiber arts realm. When I was in elementary school, both of my parents are swim coaches, and so we sort of had like a revolving door of babysitters because they would get girls from the team to come stay with us when they had meets and things like that. And one of the babysitters um, taught me how to make friendship bracelets, doing the embroidery knots and stuff like that. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. And so I was just fascinated with taking string and making it into stuff. And when I was in fourth grade, so I was about 9 years old, um, someone came to our class and taught us how to do finger knitting, where you wrap around each finger and then pull the loops over. And I made this finger knitting chain that went from one end of the house to the other end of the house. Like I was obsessed. I wouldn't stop. I was sitting there just doing it over and over again. And that's when my grandma stepped in because she was a fabulous knitter. And so when I was 10, my grandma taught me how to knit. And it's all been either downhill or uphill from there, depending on how you look at it.
From which perspective you look at it? Yeah. Do you remember like some of your first projects?
But my very first project was this bright red scarf, and it was all garter stitch, and there's holes in it, and there's places where it obviously I increased or decreased on accident, and it's about this long. Like it barely wraps around my neck, but I still have it because it means so much to me. But yeah, that was probably the first knitting project I ever did.
So how you managed to save it all these years?
I'm kind of a pack rat, as you can see. I keep pretty much everything, especially if I think it might have emotional significance down the road. And I mean, that I think just got put away with like other winter hats and scarves and things. And then I came back years later and I was like, oh, this is the scarf that I made. And I was like, I should keep this to make sure I always remember where I started.
So then when did you learn how to crochet? Did you learn by yourself or somebody taught you how to do it?
So when I was a senior in high school, so I was 17 years old, I had gotten really back into knitting again because I had taken a little time off when I was a troublesome teenager. And I saw these amazing scarves that had vertical stripes of different colors, and I really wanted to do that. And in my mind, that seemed really, really complicated to do with knitting. But with crochet, all you have to do is chain super long and just work that way. And so I decided I wanted to learn to crochet. So I went out and I bought a book, and somewhere buried deep in my house, there is that first scarf. But the very foundation chain was so tight because I had no idea about crochet tension or anything. And then every progressive row got a little bit looser. So the whole thing ended up turning into kind of a rainbow because the one side was so short and the other end was so wide. And I was like, this is really cool. It feels like a little less intense than knitting just because you don't have to worry about dropping stitches as much. And um, yeah, so that was how I started crocheting. I learned from a book, and there we go.
So how did your love for amigurumi happen? Like when did that became part of your life?
Well, so I had always kind of been aware of, knit and crochet stuffed animals, but I always thought that that was something that was way too complicated. I would never be able to get the hang of it. Um, and then I saw a pattern on Etsy for a little tiny manatee keychain. And I was like, I'm gonna try it because manatees are my favorite animal, and I would love to have this little keychain. And as I worked through the pattern, I realized that's all this is you just make increases and decreases, and that makes the size, and then you stuff it. Like,
Right.
and from then on out, I was absolutely hooked. And it was like trying to figure out how I could make other shapes in the same way.
So when did it became a business?
Um, it became a business in 2016. 2016, I believe, is when it officially opened. Um, at the time, leading up to the opening of Droopy Zoo, um, I was living back in Michigan with my parents, and one of my friends from high school, he and his wife were expecting their first child. And so I decided I was going to make a baby blanket and then some stuffed animals. And I looked around for patterns, and I just kind of felt like some of them weren't exactly what I was looking for. So I was like, why don't I try to just figure it out on my own? And so I made a lion, an elephant, an octopus, and a turtle. And it was all my own patterns, all just trial and error. And when I gave them to my friend and his family, they were like, people would pay a lot of money for these. And I was like, no, they wouldn't. And they kept encouraging me. And so I started working on it. And then I moved from Michigan to Los Angeles to pursue a career in costume design. And so I did have a lot of spare time. So in my spare time, I went and got a bunch of different yarns and tried different techniques and came out with about 12 different animals. And so when I opened the shop, I had about 12 designs, and that was it.
So how was it received? How was like that first time you opened the store? Like, what was the reception of the store?
I am very, very fortunate to have some very supportive people in my life. And so I was getting orders right away from people I knew or friends of friends. So I felt very lucky because I know a lot of people struggle to get those first few sales when they open a shop on Etsy. And I remember how excited I was the very first sale I got that was from someone I'd never met or heard of. And it was maybe a month or two in, and it was just so exciting to be like, someone who doesn't know me and has no vested interest in supporting me saw what I made and liked it enough that they want it.
So like, do you get pictures back of people with your stuffed animals?
That is my absolute favorite part. I wish it happened more. I think people don't even think that I would want to see it, or they think they would be bothering me, but it's my favorite part. I love hearing the stories, seeing the pictures. Um, there was a little girl who received one of my flamingos as a gift, and they sent back a picture and a whole story about how she loved the flamingo. She named him Frank, and then she just takes him with on all of her adventures. And they go play in the backyard, and Frank is by her side, and it was just absolutely wonderful. While I was also doing custom dogs, so people would send me photos of their pets, and I would do a crochet replica. And some of my favorite photos are the dog's reactions to the crochet dog, because some of them are like so excited, and some of them are like, "What is that?"
Did you just get the replacement for me?
But yeah, it's such a magical thing to get to see something you created out in the world being enjoyed.
Right. I mean, I think people don't really realize how much it means to an artist to see the stuff that they make being used, loved, worn. Like, because I mean,
Absolutely.
I get like, this is my favorite thing. Like, I see it, like, sometimes I would make like a hat for a friend of my son, and then they would post a picture like 3 years later wearing that hat. And I'm like, oh my God, they still have the hat and they wear it. Like, to me, this is like the
Yeah.
compliment, So I can imagine. So let's talk about that little yarn collection you have on the back of you.
This has been growing for years. For Amigurumi, I mostly work in acrylic yarn. I think that it holds its shape a lot better than some of the natural fiber yarns, and it's hypoallergenic, it's washable. And so every time I'm, working on a new project where I need a specific color, I will, buy a skein, and then it gets added to the collection. And so sometimes I don't have to go to the store. Sometimes I can just go shopping here and I have all the colors I need.
Right.
But I do enjoy going to the store.
If you go to a store, do you come out with like one skein of yarn that you need for the next project, or do you come with a cart?
I try to be responsible about it because I know that if I had my way, I would just buy all the yarn. So especially if I know that it's a brand or a colorway that's around, that's not going to sell out, it's not going to be discontinued, I'll just get the one skein that I need and leave. And I also have a rule where if I don't know what I'm gonna make with a skein of yarn, I won't buy it, even if I love it. Even if I'm like, you should figure that out later. I just, I have to, I have to set some boundaries.
Does it work the same way for knitting?
So I haven't knit as much in recent years. Once Drew Vizu started, it's pretty much all crochet all the time. But I have different tastes when it comes to yarn for knitting. I like much finer yarn. I do prefer natural fibers for when I'm knitting. And so sometimes I will buy something and be like, I want to knit something with that later,
Okay.
even though I don't have an idea in mind.
So let's talk about the business side of the amigurumi, the stuffed animals, right? You can't make one, you need to make a bunch of the same thing. Like, does that ever get boring for you?
It's so funny. I think this is something I need to work on in myself, but whatever I'm doing, I wish I were doing the other thing. So when I'm designing a new pattern, I'm like, oh, this is so labor intensive and I have to think and I have to count and I have to write notes. And I wish I was just making something that I've already made before that's familiar. And then when I'm making my, eighth octopus, I'm like, God, I wish I could do something new and exciting. And so I think both sides of it are fun. I just need to get better at appreciating what I'm doing at the time.
So I notice also, like, you have this love of bees, because there's so many reels on your Instagram about picking up bees and finding the honeycombs and re-nesting the bees and like doing all these things. And then there is your collection of Halloween bees. And I feel like every time I look at your bees, they have like different sassiness to them and different facial expression. And like some of them are like grouchy and some of them are smiling and some of them are full of attitude. Is that part of the fun for you, like to think of how to change the same shape into something different?
Absolutely. That is the happy medium between making something completely new and getting to do something familiar, because all of my bees have the same base pattern. And then I just think of different colors, different, limbs or accessories to make it into something else. And it's so fun to see how versatile that one little shape can be, because I did the Halloween bees were so much fun to make because there were so many options. And I have a full list for next year of ones that I didn't get a chance to make this year. And
Can I tell you my
it's just so
favorite?
fun.
Can I
Yeah,
tell you
yeah.
my favorite? My favorite was the devil one, because the pointy tail, that was just like,
It was just, and part of the fun is coming up with the names. And so like Bee Deviled, and there was a witch who was Bewitched, and it's just, they're so much fun. And it's not reinventing the wheel each time. I mean, because I've got a place to start and it's just sort of like working within a set of rules. I have a bee that's roughly this size, the eyes go here, the mouth goes here, the wings go here, but what else can I do to make it look like something else?
you feel like you're being a kid every time you make one?
Oh yeah, I get so excited. I have friends who I text pictures of when they're done before I, show everyone. And most of the time they get very excited, and sometimes they're just like, you have to stop spamming me with bees. You send me 8 bees a day and they're all amazing, just leave me alone.
Well, why bees? Why you like always coming back to bees? Like, why are they such an important animal to you personally?
Well, it's such a funny thing, because I never would have guessed that bees would be my thing, because I know manatees have always been my favorite animal. But I do a bee design was one of the first 12, from when I opened the shop. And so I've always loved them. I think they're so cute. I think actual bees, like living bees, are so incredibly important to the world and such a big part of, providing a better world for future generations. And so I think anything that sort of brings attention to bees or reminds people of bees, I think helps in some little way. And a friend of mine, is a beekeeper here in Michigan. And we met at a craft show and she saw some of my bees. And she had previously had someone else that was crocheting little bees for her to sell when she does farmers markets with her honey and other bee products and stuff. And so she asked, would that be something you could do? Is you make me, a supply of bees that I could sell? It would still have your label, all that stuff. But so then last summer, I had just made a big batch of bees for her, and I was on TikTok, and Texas Bee Works, who is Erica, who lives in Texas, and she's the one that does the incredible bee videos where she finds bees, under umbrellas, in washing machines, in toilets, and does these incredible videos, and has a very recognizable voice. And so I thought, wouldn't it be funny if I took my crochet bees, because I have so many of them, and used her voiceover to make it seem like I was, saving the bees. And it took off more than I ever could have expected. And it was sort of like, this is awesome. I get to make something I enjoy making. I get to sort of bring attention to Texas Bee Works and the work that she's doing. In my own small way, I get to help out a little bit with the actual living bees.
Right.
But yeah, so they're fun, they're cute, and they're so versatile. You can do anything with them.
Right. So I saw a lot of animals that look simple enough, right? They a bee is sort of like, you can understand that it's like easy to make, it's easy shape to recreate. But then you have like a dragon that looks impossible to make. How do you decide like what you're gonna make?
It's, inspiration comes in the weirdest of places. And the dragon I think you're talking about, was the color changing dragon. And Premier Yarns came out with that chameleon yarn, which when it reacts to UV sunlight and it changes colors. And so in that case, it was very much what's something that would look absolutely magical changing colors. And I love dragons, and I wanted it to be, so the chameleon yarn is this very fine cotton yarn. And so I didn't want to do something sort of chunky and round like the bees. I wanted to do something a little more sleek, a little more elegant, something that would really show off how cool this color changing yarn is. And so that sort of evolved, and little pieces were informed by this and that. And that was the first time I think I had successfully worked with craft wire in order to get the wings to keep their shape. And I love doing projects where I get to try new things, and that was definitely one of them.
Well, is it like ever stops you because you have a business and because you need to stock up the store? Is that ever a decision that you have to make? Like, am I going to make 20 bees or one dragon?
Sometimes for sure. I was very, very lucky in 2021 that I had videos like the bee video, and my very first one that did well was a giant hippo. And so last year was a huge year for my business. I got a lot more attention. I got a lot more reach than I had in previous years. And so now I get to sort of set my own schedule. I get to decide, okay, I'm going to do bees then, or I'm going to do a few more intricate things here and there. Leading up to that, so it's been about 6 years, I think, of Drooby Zoo being open. And for the first 2 years or so, I would only list things in the shop if they were already made and ready to ship. And that worked for a while, but it turns out I was spending a lot of time making things that would then just sit in the shop for a while. And so I thought, to sort of remedy that, I would start doing made to order. So I would make one, take pictures of it, and then people could pick that one and I would make it. And I'm a pretty quick crocheter, so I had like a 2-week turnaround time that I would get everything made and shipped out. And so that way I didn't have a bunch of animals that weren't selling just sitting around my apartment. And so that worked really well for me for a while. And plus I was doing custom orders and stuff on top of that. But now it's such a dream. I get to decide what I want to make, when I want to make it. And thankfully with like TikTok and Instagram, I can find people that want those things.
Right. Well, let's talk about TikTok and Instagram. So you there all the time?
Yes.
And like, not only you there all the time, but you constantly uploading like a lot of reels and TikTok videos, and they have like you have this like funny videos. So you have to have constantly like working on new ideas of what you're gonna do, what music you're gonna use, what voice you're gonna use, how to make it funny. How much time do you spend on planning all of that?
Well, thankfully, there's a lot of time when you're just crocheting that you can think. So I do multitask a little bit. I'll just, I'll be working on bees and thinking about, okay, what other videos can I do? Or are there any funny videos I saw recently that I could put a twist on or anything like that? But it does take a lot of time. It's it's something that I really enjoy, though. I think my first criteria for a post that I make, especially a funny post, is that I have to think it's funny. And if I think it's funny, then it's okay with me if not everyone does. Like, I want to enjoy what I'm doing. I never want it to feel like a chore or like, ugh, I have to do another post today. I want it to be like, ooh, what should I post today? Um, so in that respect, I really have just enjoyed so much this whole journey of being able to meet people all around the world and just share the things that I make with them.
Does it ever like overwhelm you that you have to come up with patterns, post it on Instagram, crochet it in multiple numbers, list it on Etsy, pack that order, ship that order, deal with like customers who wanted it yesterday, all of that? Like, does that ever overwhelm you?
It can get a little stressful for sure. It's it's very much a balancing act of, like sometimes all I want to do is crochet, but I have all these other things that I need to do. I need to edit videos, I need to work on the Etsy listings, I need to package orders and all that stuff. And so sometimes I don't get to do exactly what I want to do. I have to, run the business. But um, for the most part, I think I enjoy different parts about every aspect of it. So I'm never miserable. Like, I get stressed out because there's so much to do, but I enjoy doing all of it. So even though I'm stressed, I can find the energy and the motivation to do everything.
Are there ever like a moment when you're like, you know what, I don't know why I'm doing all of this. I should have just gone and continued on costume design.
I don't think so. um, I think for me, there just really isn't another path. I've tried a bunch of other things and I was just never feeling fulfilled. I loved costume design and I still occasionally will work on a project here and there. Um, but the lifestyle of a costume designer is a lot more chaotic and you just don't really have control because you don't know when you'll have a project, when you'll be working on set, when you'll be, doing all of these different parts of that career. And at the end of the day, someone else is telling you when to do all of these things and what needs to be done. And with something like running Droopy Zoo, I get to call all the shots. And so if it ever feels like too much, or if I ever feel like I need more or less structure, I can provide that for myself. And so I think it's been a long journey, but I'm so happy with where I am right now. I just feel like this is how I wanted my life to run.
Right? Did the COVID affect it at all?
I feel a little guilty because it really didn't. Um, I was already working from home. I was already, both of my parents are retired. I moved back to Michigan from Los Angeles in, I think, 2018, right before everything. And so I was staying at home, just sort of getting back on my feet here in Michigan. And then COVID hit. And so I was already living here, already spending most of my time here. And with all of the accommodations that places like Michael's and Joanne made for, contactless pickup, I was really able to just sort of keep going.
Is there ever like a day you wake up and you're like, I don't know what I'm gonna make today? Do you ever like have this creative block where you don't know what to work on next?
All the time. And usually what I do is I just make a bee because I know that people like the bees. I know that the bees will do fine. And so it's sort of like, you just got to get moving. You just got to get creating something, even if it's something you've made 1,000 of. And that usually is enough to spark inspiration for something else. And on the days when I really feel absolutely no motivation, I just will take some time off. I'll just go play with my dog or, do something else, call a friend until that motivation strikes. Because I never want motivation to feel like forced. I never want it to be like, okay, I need to make something. So what am I going to make? I think I want it to be like, oh, I have this idea to make something. I'm going to make that. And if I don't have that, I'd rather wait and do something that I'm inspired by than force something.
So there was this one picture of the quilting doctor, who I'm also going to interview soon, sitting on the floor in the ruins of the sun that he was making, that was your pattern. So you mentioned your dog. Does that ever happen with your stuff? Like, do you ever have to tag away one of your toys from the puppy's mouth?
I'm amazed. So Billy is 2 years old. We got him in February of 2020, so a month before everything shut down. So he is definitely a pandemic puppy. He's got some quirks because he didn't have like a normal growing up. He didn't get to meet a lot of people. He didn't get to go places. So he's very, very strange. He is very playful, very likes to bite me, likes to chew on me. But for some reason, he does not go anywhere near anything I've made. And I don't know if it's because he can smell so much of me because it's literally made with my hands. And he gets like, oh, that's his toy. That's not my toy. Because he has his own set of toys that he knows that he can destroy and chew on. So I've never had that issue. That video of John with the sun was absolutely hysterical.
It looked pretty gutted. It was like stuffing all over the floor there. Do you find that you met a lot of people that you call now your close friends on Instagram?
Absolutely. That's I think the biggest difference in my life, other than, just the reach of knowing, of getting my stuff seen by more people, is when I was starting out, I was living in LA and I wasn't really connecting with other crafters. I wasn't using other people's patterns. I was trying to figure out how to do things on my own. And I had my Instagram and I was very separate from it. There weren't a lot of posts with me in them. It was all just focused on the thing that I'd made. And so, there was slow growth through those years. And then I noticed when I started being a little more personal and showing myself and my thought process and letting my sense of humor come through, I noticed that people responded a lot better to that. And then when I joined TikTok and had the video blow up, and all of a sudden I had all of these people that I, had seen their work before, um, and now I've spent so much time doing other people's patterns and connecting with other crafters and, commiserating over the things that are irritating and enjoying, like celebrating each other's victories. And I'm kicking myself for not getting more involved sooner, because I think that specifically the crochet community has been so welcoming and so incredible and supportive. And yeah, this last year I've made so many just who I imagine are going to be lifelong friends.
Have you ever considered making costumes for your stuffed animals?
Ooh,
Being a costume designer for the toys you made?
that's like fabric, like sewing costumes. Ooh, I have not. That's a really, that's a great idea. Especially, I got a Cricut a couple years ago, and mine cuts fabric. So on that scale, I could easily cut out pattern pieces on my Cricut, and that's a really good idea. That might be something we see in the not too distant future.
Totally like combine two passions of yours, and
Yeah,
yeah, that would like bring them to another level.
that would be a lot of fun to have like a whole line of, like the Victorian costumes or the the Renaissance
And
medieval costumes.
Henry VIII. You know?
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, I can't wait to see those. Like, I hope you're gonna play with that a little bit. So tell me how you got into the quilting. When did that happen?
So that's 100% John's fault. Um, so John and I met through TikTok. I saw one of his videos where he showed how he was organizing his fabric collection, and he was using comic book boards, and he had this beautiful bookshelf just full of fabrics. And I was like, I would like to see more of that. And so I followed him right away, and we just started chatting. He would come into my lives, and we started chatting on Instagram, and I just seeing more of his work and the just crazy cool stuff that he's doing. I was like, you know, I have a sewing machine. I know how to sew. I don't know why I've never tried quilting before. And so with John and the help of his friend Shan, who taught him to quilt, I'm slowly picking up the skills. And I mean, I'm a little upset with both of them for, I thought it was bad enough that I spent all this money on yarn, but now I buy fabric as well. Like it's just too much. I'm gonna have to get a bigger house.
Well, when you plan the quilt, when you like think about the quilt, what takes you longer, like to actually quilt or to plan it?
So if you're including like the cutting and like the starching of the fabric and all stuff, the planning takes so much longer. The sewing is so fast. But so I'm doing my very first quilt. I'm about halfway done with the quilt top, and I had to plan everything out as far as like what colors were going where, what fabrics I was going to use. Then I had to wash and starch all of the fabric so that it would be stiff and easy to work with. And then I had to cut. I think my first quilt is going to have the blocks for the quilts they're square, but then there's 4 triangles on the corners. And so each block is about 5 squares that I had to cut out. And so I think I'm a very tall person, so I was like, this needs to be a big quilt. So I think there's over 830 squares that I had to very carefully measure and cut out and keep it organized. And now I'm at the portion where I'm just sewing the corners together, and it goes so quickly compared to the planning stages.
Are you a perfectionist? Like when you make stuff, do you have the corners have to be exactly 90 degrees or you rip them off?
It's so funny because some days I would tell you I'm absolutely a perfectionist, and some days I'm like, done is beautiful. Like once it's finished, that's great. It doesn't matter if it's, but I think with quilting, I'm a little bit more of a perfectionist. I think crochet can hide a lot of sins. Like if you make a mistake here or there, or if you finish a round and there's one extra stitch, you just decrease it and get rid of it and forget that it happened. Whereas with quilting, I feel like there's it's a little more obvious when you don't take the time to make sure the points line up. And also Shan and John are both incredibly talented quilters who are very much perfectionists. And so I feel like I want to live up to that and make sure that I don't embarrass them, because people will know that they taught me.
Is that like a general thing with you? Like, do you have this feeling that you have to be on certain level to like impress your peers in the business?
Um, that's a really good question. I think it's just sort of like a chicken egg situation where like I don't know which came first. Like I know when I make something that I'm really proud of and other people respond really well to it, I know that I love that feeling. And so I always want to recreate that feeling. And so when I make something and I'm like, this could be better, I would rather strive to make it better than just be like, here's this thing I did, whatever.
Okay.
So I think to some level, yeah, I think you always want to strive to improve your skills, and a lot of the way to tell if you're doing that is by the reaction of other people.
Do you ever get like really negative customer experience? Like you sell something and I don't know, the shipment get lost or it comes damaged or they thought it's going to be 7 times bigger or whatever the situation. Like, have you ever had something like that?
There have been a few times, and I remember all of them. Those are the types of things. I'm pretty much an overthinker in that I try to think about a situation and all the possible outcomes and stuff like that. So when I do like a custom order, I'm very communicative that they see it before, so there's no surprises when they get it. And but sometimes there are people that you just can't please, and so part of my 2022 goals are to accept that there are some people that are just not going to be happy no matter what. I think I take a lot of pride in my work, and so I never want someone to have a negative response and for me to be like, yeah, that's true, I didn't do that right, or yeah, that's true, I should have paid more attention to that. So I think most of the negative complaints I get are for things that are completely out of my control, like if the post office lost the package, or if it took too long to get there, or you know, um, as far as size goes, I think people are surprised sometimes by how big some of my things are. I think it doesn't help that I am a relative giant, so me holding something makes it look smaller than it is, and they receive it and they're like, why is this so big? But I try to keep, you know, all the measurements listed in the listing, so it's sort of like, I told you how big it was. I tried to take pictures for scale, I'm sorry. But I think for the most part, the things that I can control, I do put in the effort to control those things.
Well, you have so many sides to your business. If there was one thing you could give to somebody else to do for you, what would it be?
Ooh, I think there's two things that jump immediately to mind. One is like processing orders, like packaging and getting everything, because that it takes so long. I mean, like to do it, I like to write handwritten thank you notes for every order that I do. I have little note cards printed up that I just fill out, and I think that's just like a nice touch to know that a real person made this for you. And so like it would be so amazing if I had someone who could be doing all of the packaging and doing it, and all I had to do was write the notes. The other thing would be setting prices, because that is my least favorite part of everything. Because you don't want to undervalue your own work and your own time. And you also, for me at least, I fear the judgment of other people when they see that and go, you're charging that much for that, it's not worth that. And intellectually, I know that I'm the one who gets to decide how much something is worth that I made, but emotionally, that still hurts when someone looks at it and says, you're charging too much for that.
Do you
And
have any
so,
service, like, because we living in such a international market, and there are people from other countries for whom the hourly pay is like, you know, 100th of what's the minimum wage here, and so they can produce the same exact thing for fraction of the cost, right? Does that ever come into the play that like you have to adjust based on the global market, or you don't even think about it?
I think sometimes I do. I mean, this is a little sometimes I will look on Etsy or online at other things that are similar to what I've made and sort of adjust my prices accordingly, just because even if a math problem tells me that it should be this much, if all of the other people selling it are selling it for this much, then this much is probably too much to ask. And I mean, in a perfect world, people would be, you know, falling over themselves to pay whatever for my work. But in a realistic world, you have to find sort of a medium. I think one of the things that I do, anytime I have to raise prices a little bit, one of the things that I do find comforting is that what I'm making is a luxury. It's not a necessity. It's not something that you absolutely need to survive. So while I do feel bad that not everyone can afford something handmade, I do understand that it's not going to, you know, make or break them.
Right. Um, what's the furthest you sell one of your toys to?
I think so. I've had a couple go to Australia, and I think that is the furthest. Um, I did have one that went to Canada one time, but for some reason it made a side trip to Japan on the way. Um, so it wasn't going to Japan, but it went to Japan. So that might be the furthest. But I've had some sales internationally, which were really exciting. And it's always so fun to see like a new country pop up and figure out, you know, shipping requirements to that country. But yeah, Australia, some European countries, Germany, France, the Netherlands. It's always super exciting to imagine something that I made so far out in the world.
Right. Is there one toy that you consider like your masterpiece?
Ooh, I think one of the things that I like so much about it is that everything is so different. I think there's such a broad range of things that are possible with crochet that I feel like I can't even begin to rank them. Like they're like something I would consider like one of my cutest things is my baby Yeti,
Oh,
which is just a little fluff ball. Like I just think it's so fun. It's just cute and fluffy. Um, but like there are definitely things that I've made that are so much more intricate and more, you know, impressive. And so I have a hard time picking favorites.
have hard time pricing those, like the more complicated, the more intricate ones.
Absolutely. And it's one of the reasons that I've sort of stepped back from taking custom orders, because I've learned that I'm not good at estimating how difficult something's going to be. I have like a loose idea in my mind of how, but then once you get into the nitty gritty of like actually designing it, you're like, wow, this is actually going to take a lot longer than I thought. And so I was underpricing a lot of things just based on how easy I thought it was going to be versus how easy it actually was. But yeah, so I now I will take those projects and suggestions and things and I'll make them before I set a price.
Right. Do you have a dream for this business? Like, do you think about how you want it to grow, or like what way you want it to go, or like you're so happy with where it is right now that you would be happy if it just stays that way?
Oof. I'm definitely happy with where it's going. I think selling the actual finished dolls, while I love it, is not very scalable because I can only make so many. And so I guess my goal is that the business is successful enough to a point where I don't have to do anything else. Like I can just crochet all day. I can go get the yarn that I need, the supplies that I need, and still put food on the table and pay the bills. And so I think a lot of that is going to be towards more pattern writing and pattern designing, because that's sort of a, once you do the work, it's out there forever. And
Right.
so I'll definitely still be doing, you know, free patterns and things like that and tutorials, just because I think that's like a good way to reach out to the community and just show them your work. But I spent so many years in the beginning not using other people's patterns. I sort of took the long way there, but I feel like I have a very good understanding of the mechanics of amigurumi and how to make certain shapes and things. So I feel like within me, there are a lot of designs that I think the crochet community would love. And so I think that is the direction I'm headed. I would love to have a book someday with my patterns. I just think that would be the coolest.
Right.
Um,
Well,
yeah, so I'm happy with the direction it's going.
you mentioned your giant size. Have you ever thought about making a giant stuffed toys?
So I've made some pretty big things, not me size, but I've made some pretty big things. When I was living in LA, I had a customer who wanted giant pillows shaped like turtles. And so what I ended up doing was I would sew a cushion out of like a bright colored fabric, and then I would crochet a cover for that cushion. And then I crocheted the limbs for the turtle. And so the bigger one, I mean, was basically the size of my whole upper body. And then it had like, you know, arms and legs coming off. So that was probably the biggest thing I've ever made. But there's such a trend right now in the crochet community of using, you know, thicker yarns like blanket yarn or the Sweet Snuggles yarn to make the jumbo ones. And it is a lot of fun. um, a friend of mine, Adele, is a pattern designer from Australia. And so she asked me to test her Cockatoo pattern. And blanket yarn is very difficult to come by in Australia. So I offered to make my test pattern in blanket yarn so she could see the size. And it ended up being, I mean, it was enormous. We all called it Cockatoo. Billy, my dog, was absolutely terrified of it. It was just enormous. And so it is a lot of fun. And someday, if I have the extra time, I would love to, like make a life-size version of myself all out of crochet.
Well, have you ever like dream about having an exhibition where you would put all your things for people to come and admire?
That would be so much fun because I feel like you sort of walk a line of what you can do with what will sell. And so you always want to make sure that it's something that other people will want or other people will want to do. And I feel like with something like that, I could just make whatever came into my mind just to show people, just to see like, look at this weird, cool thing I made. I don't care if no one else wants to make it or if no one wants to purchase it. Like, I just did this because I could.
Right.
So that definitely would be a lot of fun.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question I started asking a lot of people on my show. If people watch this episode, how can they help you? How they can make your day? How they can help your business? Like, what can they do to help you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's as easy as just like say hi, just drop by, watch one of my videos, leave a comment. Um, it's funny how much social media has become a part of marketing for small businesses. So I feel like that is the way that I reach the most customers. And so if you interact with one of my posts, if you share it with a friend, that helps me more than pretty much anything. I mean, one sale is wonderful and I will never turn away. I mean, obviously I'm very happy when I get a sale, but if you compare one sale to sudden growth on one of these social media channels so that, all of these new people are seeing your work, it's like amazing. So yeah, and plus I just really like people. So
No, I
feel
find
free
it
to
like
say hi.
it's very true because like one of my favorite things is to read the comments under the videos. So when I publish the videos, there's like a bunch of people who watch every single one of them, and I love you guys. And they leave the like long comments and they'll write me like what they learned, what they like, how they never met this person, or like thank you for introducing us to the new artist. And to me it's like it makes it all worth it. Like to me it boosts my morale, right? But besides that, it also helps the algorithm to show like if there is activity on your channel, the YouTube promotes it to other people, right? So just by typing that comment, it actually tells YouTube this channel is being watched, and so they show it to more people who otherwise wouldn't see it, right? And it's the same thing with Instagram, because if somebody just writes a comment under your post, even if they didn't buy anything, that tells Instagram that this post is popular, and they start showing it to like much more people than would see it otherwise. So it's like it helps you in that way. Plus you get to meet all these interesting people.
For sure. And the thing, I mean, it's a little bit terrifying to think about it too much, but with like the way data is collected and algorithms and stuff, not only is it showing it to more people, it's showing it to more people like you, like the person who's leaving that comment, and people who will like and enjoy this thing. So I wouldn't want to like just shove my content on any person who doesn't care. Like I want more people who are interested in it, who are engaged in it, to see it. And when you interact with someone's social media, that's what happens.
So guys, write a comment.
And
Well,
like I
if
love, I
you think
mean,
about it, this is how we've met, because you liked some of my thing and I commented on yours, and then we start talking and I invited you to this channel, so it's like this is how we started, and this is how I've met other people that you friends with. So it's like it helps to build the community.
absolutely. And like, I mean, there are people who leave like really in-depth comments of, oh, I liked this specific thing. And there are some people who just leave a so cute, and both are valuable. Both are wonderful. I learn from some. I feel better from some. And like, so yeah, it really does build a community.
Right. Well, I can't wait to see what else you're gonna create. I'm so glad you agreed to be on my channel today, and we became friends over one comment. So I hope we'll stay in touch and we'll continue to support each other. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. I love your channel. I love watching all the interviews. It's so fascinating to see all people from different walks of life that are connected by the love of something so similar.
And it's interesting that like we might do completely different kinds of fiber arts, but we have so much in common, you know? So it's like, that's what
Exactly.
I'm learning through this journey. Well, thank you so much, Drew. Thank you for being my guest today.
Of course. Thank you.